Okay, good morning, everyone. We're here for the Village of Airmont for the Community Design Review Committee, Tuesday, January 10th, 2023 at 11:01 for CDRC. Our first applicant is the Golden Path Cemetery at 263 and 273 Route 59 for a proposed cemetery with 60 parking spaces, proposed building for services and offices with an additional 30 parking spaces for the proposed site plan and merger of the lots. Who do we have on for the applicant?
Dave Ziegler, Atzel, Nasher and Ziegler.
Hi, Dave. How are you? Happy New Year.
Excellent. Thank you for your help too.
Of
Okay.
course. That's
Good
what I'm
morning.
here.
Terry Rice, also for the applicant.
Hi, Terry. How are
Hi,
you?
how you doing today? Happy New Year.
You too.
Ron Riemann, traffic for the applicant.
Zoe Shively, landscape architect on the application.
Thank you, Zoe. And Ron.
Jacob Waxel for the
Yes.
applicant.
This is Vahid Rostami, the engineer from the applicant.
Yes, you didn't know we were in.
Okay, just who wants to start?
I'll start.
Okay,
So, we were in the front of the board about 4 or 5 months ago with a sketch on this site, which is on Route 59 opposite Walmart, adjacent to an existing cemetery. And the site is a little bit odd as it's split by a zone line. So that was most of the discussions at that time on how we handle that. So we went back and of course we submitted this concept. Now this concept shows the two lots. The lot on the north or the fronts on 59, that's tax lot 49.1. That's 6.4 acres, and that's in a NS commercial zone. So on that lot, we're showing access, and we're also showing 3 buildings. We're showing building A and B that's short, that's very faded, and then of course building C. And the reason we did that was just to show you what could go on the front lot and how the traffic pattern could be. But in real life, we're just asking for an approval for building C, which is going to be the religious service offices for the cemetery. We're not asking to build A or B. We are not asking for approval to build A or B. The second part of that is the cemetery. Now, the cemetery is on the back lot, which does have full access to 59 by a 50-foot flag lot type of layout. And that means you have 50 foot from the lot all the way out to 59 in fee to the tax lot, and that's tax lot 49.21. That lot's 24 acres, and it's in the R40 zone. So of course we can't have any commercial buildings in there, but we can have a cemetery by special permit. So we're showing a cemetery on that back piece of property. It's no access through it. It's just a normal cemetery, and it's going to be the site's going to be leveled off. On the right side of the map or the east side, you'll see a dashed line. That's a retaining wall. So on the right side, the east side, that wall will be to cut the grade down 12 foot. So this cemetery will be a lot 50, 60 foot below some of the homes up on the other road on hillside, at least 40 foot above their yards. On the left side, which is the west side, you'll see that same line. And at that point, that wall's a 10-foot retaining wall to hold the cemetery. So that means the ground on the left side, the wetland side, would be lower. That levels the cemetery off. And then within that cemetery, we show circulation and parking. So both of the proposals, and I say both, meaning building C and the cemetery, can stand on their own. In other words, they don't need a variance. The building C has enough parking around it to meet the code, and the cemetery has enough parking to meet the code. In addition, we provided landscaping plans, grading plans, and erosion control, and we have a SWIP prepared. We did not submit it yet. And I think the biggest questions we had were how we're going to handle the seeker, because we do have a traffic report, and we would like that to be submitted to the DOT when you do the seeker part of this circulation. And the other item that was pretty big on the comment sheet was the Army Corps, and we're waiting for the Army Corps since last fall, well over 8 months, to come out to the site. So they're not going to do it now. They're going to wait until spring. So sometime in the next 2 months or 3 months, we'll have a letter from the Army Corps on our delineation. And that was done by Mr. Bates. And that's new. That's not the old one. There's like 3 or 4 different delineations on this property during the years of many layouts. But this is very recent delineation flagged last summer. We have no problem with any of the comments, and unfortunately, and it's my fault, we forgot to show the fire truck, and we'll do that on the next plan, showing the fire truck movements into the site and around the site and exiting the site. And that's about it for just an introduction.
John, do you have any comments, or do you want to have Ron discuss the traffic study first?
You can have him just do a brief discussion of the traffic study before I'll go over my comments.
Okay, go ahead, Ron.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Suzanne and John. So I guess I'll start with the middle part here. So, and it's part of the Fusco Engineering memo, this has to be reviewed by DOT. But so we conducted our traffic study, and we first worked with Dave's office to put the driveways in the best position. The full movement would be east of the Walmart, right turn in, right turn out driveway. And then the right turn in, right turn out driveway would be west of the Burger King Dunkin' Donuts driveway. And that would give us enough spacing between both intersections for left turn access. And we do have the benefit of having the the center left turn lane. So access to the site, as proven by our analysis, would be operate safely and at acceptable levels of service. We collected our traffic volumes during the week for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, taking into consideration the type of use, the type of religious use. And based on those volumes, we determined that the PM and Sunday hours would be the critical hours. We based our cemetery generation based on industry standards. I know Fusco Engineering had a comment on that. Industry standards, and that ranged from 30 trips in the morning, peak hour, to 64 on Sunday. So again, we ran the critical hours of operation based on the volumes along Route 59 for the weekday PM highway hour and a Sunday hour, and a resulting driveway analysis showed that the full movement driveway, which will have its own left turn lane into the site, will operate at a level service C, and the right turn in, right turn out driveway will operate at level service B. I could answer Fusco Engineering's comment, or I should wait for John's comment. So you let me know, John, if you want me to answer your comment.
Yeah.
Or
We'll do the traffic portion first. So I think the general comment I had in here was that it does have to go to DOT. So DOT has the final say. It's their road. So, ultimately, if they're happy with the traffic study and that you're going to continue to operate at the same level of service after the cemetery, then we would accept, their decision. My comment, or our comment, was noting that it, just from personal experience, that I think you had indicated, 16 peak cars AM weekday and 16 or 18 leaving. And, I know myself personally, I've gone to funerals where there's 50, 60 cars. So that may be an extreme, may not be the norm, but I've seen it myself personally. So I guess I don't know if it would make a difference if you upped it somewhat or not, but if the DOT is okay with your study, then, you know, we would obviously accept that.
Right, and I can just jump in real quick with that. So seeing your comment, I did do a, before this call, I'll do a sensitivity analysis. If we doubled the volumes and we still have the same level of service, again, this will go to DOT review. And just a little side note, our Sunday, we did run a total of 64 total trips, 32 in, 32 out. And as I mentioned, based on the volumes along Route 59, the critical hour was PM and Sunday, with a little side note that the AM volume along Route 59 was similar to the volumes that we analyzed for the AM. So theoretically, we ran that AM analysis with 64, it would operate at the same levels of service. So that should give the board, or the CDRC a little comfort that, the operation, regardless of its AM, PM, or Sunday, that safe and efficient operation and good level of service will be obtained. And again, ultimately, the safety mechanism for all of us is the DOT will review it and they'll have to give us the permit for the driveways.
Right. Quick question. So the deceased, are the services for them is at that facility, or it may not necessarily be? In other words, is there a potential for a procession of 50 to 60 or 70 cars, or in general, will the deceased services be held at that facility? I guess that's an important question to ask, because it makes a difference as to whether there's a train of 70 cars going down the road for 4 miles, or whether, they come in sporadically over the course of a half hour for services.
I think I would have to leave that up to probably, someone on the project team that's familiar with the operation of the specific use of the cemetery.
Yeah, Jacob can answer that.
So I would say that in general, the services will be done, usually it's done not on site. It's done usually at the synagogue, and then they come there, but it's in general. It could be sometimes
Thanks.
that there's, that they do a smaller service over there, but like I said, in general, it will be off-site.
Okay. It might be good to note in the traffic study that generally when that happens, at least around here where I'm from, that we do have coordination with the town police so that they can, shut off certain intersections so that, the procession can safely make it to the cemetery, unlike the normal everyday traffic flow, which that's not the case. So that might be something good to add to your report.
Thank you.
So I guess that being said, I'll just quickly go over my comments, and a lot of these will not be answered until we actually get to the planning board. We're still in CDRC, but comment 1, we are recommending that this be a circulated, coordinated review, because there is a large area of disturbance here. I think it's up to 30 acres, and some potential impacts, mainly traffic, possibly a site area disturbance, stormwater, and that the planning board may want to issue a positive declaration. They may not. They may want to maybe just handle these environmental concerns as an expanded EAF. So basically comments 1 and 2, there's really not too much talking about it. Actually 3, if you include the traffic study, because we can't answer those questions until we get to the planning board. So I just want to make sure that they're in there so that they get addressed. Comment 4 is just noting that we do have to go to county under GML 239. And again, this is premature, but I just want to make sure it's noted. As you discussed, comment 5, we're waiting on the wetland validation. The test pits, I know you agree to do them, but you want to get further along the process to the planning board. That's fine. Landscaping and lighting, landscaping plan to me looks very good. There's significant buffer landscaping and a very healthy distribution of trees and shrubs. But I want just put it in there that the planning board should also review it, so that, and/or the CDRC. So if they want any additional landscaping, the time to ask for that would be now or sometime in the near future. And then the only other comment under landscaping is, under lighting. I think ultimately we're looking for some sort of, at least in the areas, the traveled areas, the walkways, the driveways, the parking areas, that there's enough landscaping, enough lighting to provide a minimum half-foot candle in the parking areas and in the walking areas. That can be again addressed at the planning board stage. And then the last comment is to just discuss, if you could, any visual impacts to this site mainly from, I think, the adjoining property owners as well as the state highway. So maybe you want to do a quick comment on that, and then I'll go on to the engineering comments.
Yeah, basically the site sets quite deep from Route 59. So if you'd have to be looking for it, or looking for the site to get access and to see it. The other areas around it, the homes are 100, 150 foot away from the cemetery, and that it will not be visible during the summer. But when the leaves fall, the homes on the higher side could see it because of the difference in elevation. The homes on the south and to the west would not see it because in some cases it's 300-400 foot to the site. So that's why the landscaping plan really buffers our east side, because when the leaves fall, we know that that would be visible, and we took that into account.
Okay, quick question. I should know this, but I don't have the plan in front of me, just so that the board knows. Are those homes above or below the cemetery?
Oh, they're above the cemetery by 30, 40, and maybe in some case 60 foot. So they are above. Yeah, and that's why we proposed the retaining wall. We'll be cutting back into the slope. So that's why Zoe replanted behind the retaining wall. So we know that we'll be disturbing that to put the wall up. So we planned on landscaping that area that's disturbed. The rest of it will be left in its natural state from that.
Okay, thank you. Under engineering, we do note that an erosion and sediment control plan has been provided at some point in time. And again, it might be premature since we're only at CDRC, is that we do need the full SWIP addressing pre and post development stormwater runoff, as well as the inclusion of the draft ENOI and any other New York State DEC design criteria. This is a site that's going to be multi-phased. I'm sure you guys know that the maximum site disturbance at any time is 5 acres, unless you want to go to an individual permit from the DEC. So phasing, all that type of stuff has to be included in the SWIP. But I do recognize that you have prepared a fairly elaborate erosion and sediment control plan at this stage. We will need a stormwater maintenance agreement for this project. That's usually done after we're prepared to perhaps have a public hearing, or between a public hearing and final site plan approval. So there is a significant amount of fill to the site. So in your response, you had indicated that you would comply with the section of the Village of Airmont Code. So I don't know if that note is actually on the drawing, but we asked that that be put on there so it's clear.
We'll do that.
And switching back to my previous comment regarding a lighting plan, we're going to be looking for a lighting plan specifically for the parking area of the proposed building. And, you know, maybe some night low-level lighting and walkway areas, so that that's something to look at anywhere pedestrians might be traversing in evening hours. So we're also we do see a fence detail on the plans, but I didn't really see where the fence actually goes around the property, or whether it's just, you know, 5 feet offset off the property line going all the way around. But we need to show the location for that. And moving on to comment number 7, buildings A and B. They're shown for future use, okay? And they're also included kind of in the calculations, and I want to make it clear that they're shown for future purpose, but they're not for approval at this time. So that should, the site plan eventually get approved and signed and stamped, and somebody comes in for a building permit on, building B or building A, they have to come back to planning board. We're not approving those. Those are just future locations, and it's subject to further site plan review should you decide to come back for site plan approval for either one of those lots. So I'm asking that notation be made clear on the plans. And, a detailed engineering review of the grading and drainage will be performed. We do see pipe slopes and inverts. We do see some pond sizing. I think it's premature at this point to do a full-blown engineering review on that, but we will do that when we get to the planning board stage.
Yeah, we have no problem with those. We have no problems with those comments.
Lou, do you have anything?
I do have one question. John brought it up, but didn't mention it in his engineering review. The plans for building C show it as being 85,000 square feet, and it says to be used for religious services. Is that religious services year round, or for people from, or just for cemetery use? And how much of that will be offices and how much will be chapel?
I don't think we're at that point yet. That'd be our next step to break that up into uses.
Okay,
And we'll get an answer for you, whether it's just cemetery use or weekly use.
okay. Well, because that would help determine the parking spaces.
Correct. I understand.
Clarify, you're talking about 8,500 square feet, not 85,000.
Yeah.
And the services over here, planned services is only for funeral.
Okay, there were the letters from the Tallman Fire Department, December 30th, and the fire inspector from yesterday, which I know, Dave, you said you're going to address in your next submission.
Yeah, the fire truck
Yes.
turning radius is, yeah.
Yep,
Yes, that's my mistake.
that's okay. Anybody else have anything?
Suzanne,
Yes,
I don't know if you met anyone else on your team or our team, but
either.
thanks. Dave's laughing over in the corner. Hey, procedurally, Dave or Suzanne,
Okay.
submission to DOT, will that be through the village?
Well, usually when you submit to go to the planning board, I submit to the Rockland County Planning for the GML and all the agencies, and I would include your report. And if you're going to add the comments that John noted, if you wanted to give me a supplemental letter to that, to add to it, I'll do that as well.
Great. And as part of that submission, I'm sure Dave's plans will be included, correct?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Right,
The
yep.
plans, the narrative, the EAF, everything else. They have to see everything.
Great.
Now,
So what
also,
is our next step?
yeah, I was gonna say also procedurally, I think we'd like to get in front of the planning board at this point. If nothing else, at least get their notice of intent to be lead agency going.
Myself personally, I believe these plans are of sufficient detail that you can go to the planning board at this point. There's a lot more work to do, but you've done a lot of work. You've demonstrated that, you meet code, you've done a traffic study, and I don't see any reason why you can't proceed to planning board.
Lou, Bob, Steve, you're fine with going to planning?
Yeah, I think that's fine, especially if the village professionals are satisfied with that.
I agree as well.
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Just one question. Dave, are you going to have to go through Department of State for any approvals for expansion of the cemetery?
I would leave that one to Terry Rice.
Yeah. Our understanding from the applicant's consultant is that we don't need any state approvals.
Okay.
just to interject there, when we do circulate the notice of intent to be lead agency, we are going to send a copy of that to the New York State Department of Cemeteries to give them an opportunity to comment if they wish.
Right, they don't really have jurisdiction, but that's fine.
Okay, then the February planning board meeting is Thursday, February 23rd. The submission deadline would be January 19th. And Dave and Ron, I could go through, on a separate email, the number of copies I'm gonna need with the number of agencies. I'll calculate it using the GIS. So I'll let you know, but that, if you want to go to the February meeting, that's the deadline, the 19th, because I need time to get all these packets out.
Okay,
I do have a few left, I think 2 left from the last submission, because you had given me a little extra, but if anything, the plans and things have changed, then I wouldn't be using those.
into the garbage can.
Oh, recycle.
Yes, recycle, sorry.
Okay, I will recycle. Thank you. Okay. All right, so I guess your next step is you're going to be submitting for planning board.
Right, yeah, just send us what sets you need and we're gonna make
Yeah.
these modifications and be ready.
Okay, I'll also, I don't recall, but I'll send you the stormwater management agreement, just so you have it. Because there's a Schedule A that you'll have to fill out. And then you're going to be submitting the SWIP as well, correct?
Yes,
Okay, that's good.
yes, yeah,
Yeah, usually when I have a SWIP, the Rockland County Planning likes to see that as well. So I'll include that in my number when I give you the numbers of what I need.
and you send them hard copies, you can't PDF it, anybody?
Believe me, I have tried, they want hard copies of everything. They were working on something a year ago where they were looking at PDFs. The only agency that will accept and only accept PDF is the DOT. Everybody else wants hard copies. It's
Right.
crazy,
Yeah,
but they're the only ones.
the trees are screaming.
I know. I agree. I absolutely
you.
agree. Okay,
Thank you for the help.
Oh, anytime.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. We'll be in touch.
All right, have a nice
Okay.
day.
You too. Take care.
Thank
Okay,
you.
our next application is for Yosef Beer for 5 Beaver Hollow Lane for a proposed residential house of worship. And we have a proposed site plan. If whoever's representing the project, if they could just identify themselves, please.
That'll be me, and I think Mr. Condon is
Mr.
on
Condon.
as well. Rachel Baris from Civil Tech.
Okay.
There's Brian.
Hi.
Good morning, Brian Condon, Texas.
Okay.
And I think Mendy from Fast Forward Permits is here as well.
Okay.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Does someone want to introduce the project?
Mendy, do you want to give the explanation?
I was gonna ask if Brian wants to.
Unfortunately, guys, my speech pattern is a little delayed today, so I'm going to
Okay.
defer to you guys.
I'll do a quick, so 5 Beaver Hollow, they're looking to do a residential place of worship. And it will be a Shabbos shul. They're looking at 35 congregants, according to information from the applicant directly. We are providing parking in the front. There will be a parking variance that will be required. And this is just our first introductory meeting. Just to start getting comments and feedback from the consultants.
It's Suzanne. The fire inspector just handed me a letter, which I'll send after the meeting, and he just had two comments. Number one, the fire alarm and detection system should be installed in accordance with NFPA 72, and an automatic fire sprinkler system is strongly recommended. And I'll send it to you after the meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
John, do you want to review your comments?
Sure. So, under the planning portion of the review, this comment seems to come up often on a number of different applications, but the site does require a significant number of variances, a total of six, I believe. And that's a lot of variances for one particular application, and we would ask that alternative site locations to be evaluated and looked into to reduce the number of variances required. So under comment number 2, the variances, they need to be secured by the ZBA prior to planning board approval, and each variance listed on the plans should the ZBA grant the variances. This would be considered an unlisted action under seeker, so a seeker resolution and a public hearing would be required. This project is not large enough to do a coordinated circulated review, in my opinion, but it does require a seeker resolution. The short form EAF that identifies wetlands on site or adjacent to the site, so to please show the wetlands or note that there are no wetlands on the subject parcel. Comment number 5, we're asking for more buffer landscaping along the sides of the parcel to kind of buffer the adjoining properties. So we're asking you to look into that. There are some forms in the application package that are not signed, and then there's a discrepancy. I found 2 different tax parcel identifications. So if you could correct the one, I believe it's parcel 57, but it calls it out as a different parcel in the application form. Anything to review there before I go on to engineering comments?
I actually have a question about the public hearing. I'm assuming that would just be for seeker, but the residential house of worship, the way I understand the code, doesn't require public hearing, correct?
I'm gonna defer to the planning board attorney for that.
Give me 1 second.
My understanding that it's a site plan application essentially, and that normally does require a public hearing.
Yes, because in the past, we have done that, Mendy, I can tell you, and we do the 500-foot buffer for planning, the adjacent and abutting for zoning, in terms of notifying the people in the surrounding areas. And I put it in both newspapers.
Yeah,
and we
Mendy,
did posters.
Mendy, can you point to the section of the code that you're referring to?
210-12.1B. It seems to say they would just require a site review, it didn't seem like it means a full, public hearing and all that.
You said 210-12-1B?
B. Yeah.
Number 1, regulations and application.
I believe so. Actually,
I believe I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I don't think it says that.
It says for the establishment of any residential place of worship that exceeds 1,400 square feet, an applicant shall obtain site plan approval as set forth in Article 4 in the 9 of the Airmont zoning code in the form as amended by local law 7-1997 for the establishment of any residential place of worship that is 1,400 square feet or less. The applicant shall apply for site review pursuant to the section of the code.
Yeah, so Mendy, you still need a hearing.
Yeah. I actually emailed that to John and
Here we go.
you,
It's this one.
this morning.
It's number 6, B6.
Number 6.
Yeah, B6. The last line says, if the application provides for 1,400 square feet of space or less for conduction of religious services, application should be referred by the building inspector to the CDRC and planning board for review and approval without a public hearing.
How many square feet is this project?
So the house of worship, as we're proposing, is 1,300. Let me just quickly pull it up. It's 1,373. So it's under 1,400 square feet.
I have no records to verify any of that.
Yeah, and Lou would be the one tasked with making that determination, even assuming if that's an accurate interpretation of that section of the code. So look, I don't want to give you an answer off the cuff, but I definitely want to look at 210.12.1B6.
Yeah, I think we submitted architecturals as part of the CDRC submission. No?
Nope,
Architecturals?
nope.
No, I don't have.
Site plan.
You don't have the floor plan? Okay, sorry. Thought I
No,
submitted
that was not submitted as part of the CDRC submission.
All right, so I'll email it to you, I guess. Lou, I guess that's up to you.
I would prefer a hard copy if you can get me one.
Sure, yeah, send me a hard copy.
Can you do both so I have it for the
Sure.
record?
Yeah,
too?
sure.
John, you would need a copy of that?
Sure.
Yes.
I'm okay with electronic.
Okay, so if you can give me 2 hard copies, one for me, one for Lou. And if
Sure.
you also please email it at your convenience. Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
And how many square feet would be devoted to the conducting of religious services?
So the main sanctuary is 1,373. That's what we're basing it off.
How about the women's section?
From my understanding, it doesn't have one.
Yeah, it does on the second floor balcony, from what I hear.
Let me send you the plan.
Thank you.
Yeah, again, we shouldn't really go back and forth. I'd rather just,
Sure,
you know,
yeah, no problem.
when you actually submit the application with the renderings, I think that'll put us in a better position of being able to make that decision.
Right, okay.
And I just want one quick note, because we've had a problem where it's been a little bit difficult to determine the exact square footage on different sites. To please include all the dimensions of the structure itself on the plan that you send, so it's relatively simple for us to compute the actual square footage.
All right.
And Mendy, moving forward, I understand you're here for preliminaries and that's the place to bring this stuff up. But if you have a section of the code that you're referring to, I'd prefer not to just give you an off the cuff response. So I'd like to look into it before whatever meetings are had.
Right, no, that's actually the reason I put it in my narrative. I wanted to get feedback on that.
Okay. Well, we'll look into it. Thank you.
Thanks. John, I guess the floor is yours again.
Okay, so moving on to the engineering comments. This does show that a retaining wall will be provided. So we're asking that the detail of that be put on the plans. Again, that can wait to planning board. We're only at CDRC, but we do recommend that the wall be an attractive type of retaining wall, because it is visible from the road. Certainly not like a gabion wall or anything like that, something that's attractive. Comment 2 is to provide us with a lighting plan for review. We're also asking that you indicate the maximum number of congregants on the site plan, because the parking calculations are based upon either the maximum number of congregants and or square footage. So if you could add that, that would make that clear. Comment on the infiltration chambers. They're kind of to offset the increase in stormwater runoff. This seems to be the most common practice used by the engineers. But it's actually going to be put into fill material because that whole area appears to be where we're going to be, the applicant will be filling the property. So, but if it does overflow, if you get a mega storm and it overflows, it looks like it's just going to run down the retaining wall. So I think you need some sort of overflow structure to allow it to go down to the existing drainage system in the roadway.
There's an overflow pipe out of the dry wells to tie
Okay,
into the road.
it's shown on the plan?
Yeah,
Okay, all right. I'll take another look at that. I don't know if you have.
it's fine. I mean, it's not a big deal either way, but just,
Okay.
you can look. So I did have that one.
I did notice on drainage that you're showing a 1.7 foot differential between grate and invert. So in my experience with storm drainage, even for a 12-inch pipe, you'll never get that in. And you end up having to lower the invert in order to get it in, and then that changes the pipe slopes. So I think you're going to need to adjust your inverts in order to make sure that you can physically get the pipe in the basin. We're asking just to provide a note on the type of material in the dry well area. And these are all technical comments as we move forward. But we want to make sure that since it is proposed for infiltration, that we don't end up with a silty clay loam or a clay loam, which has no infiltration capacity. Provide a finished floor elevation on the building, fire truck access. I think it's clear that it's going to have to back out. There's no way to turn around, but at least if it can hang the first turn and get close to the building, I think that's the most important thing. So we have under erosion control, some temporary measures that are used that are just take a look at that, what you show on the detail versus what's shown on the plan. I think in detail you show it, but it may not be shown necessarily on the plan view. And to show the stockpile area, I think you do have a detail, but it's not shown in plan view. This clearly would not require a full SWIP because it's well below an acre of site disturbance. Show the existing water and sewer services that are there, and comments from, the usual. Ramapo, Fire Department, Rockland County Water, Sewer, Health Department.
Thank you.
And there was a letter from Tallman Fire dated December 30th received yesterday that I forward. You could take those comments into account as well, please.
Mendy, going back to that section of the code, if you wouldn't mind, I forgot Brian was on here. If Mr. Condon wouldn't mind putting in maybe a letter just referring to that section of the code, this way, I have something to go off of when I'm reviewing it.
We'll do.
All right, thank you.
Lou, did you have anything?
No, other than what was commented already.
So I guess once we get the letter and we review the hard copies of the architecturals, we'll know where we're going from here.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if
Okay.
if what they're representing is accurate in terms of the code, I think that would spare the need for a public hearing. But again, I just want to, I want at least the village building inspector and the engineers and planners to be able to see the actual numbers and that letter from Mr. Condon before anything else happens.
All right. So then once we receive that, we'll go from there.
So are
Very
we
good.
having them come back to CDRC?
I think so. I mean, unless there's,
Yes.
some strong objection, I
Very
think
good.
that makes the most sense.
Okay. And Mendy, the next CDRC is February 14th. The deadline is January 26th.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
day. And I'll send you the fire inspector letter after the meeting.
You
Thanks.
said January 26th was the deadline?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I just wrote it down.
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you.
All right, our next application is Viola Water, New York, formerly Suez, for the Tallman Well number 26 PFAS. It's for the installation of a new 927 square foot treatment building to house the proposed treatment with improvement for adequate site access, operations, and maintenance of the entire facility. It's for an amended site plan, and I'm trying to see who we have on for the applicant.
I have Mike McAloon with Suburban representing Veolia. We also have a few of my coworkers and representatives from Veolia, Steve Garabet and Maria Stepanova available on the call.
Okay. All
And
right.
so just to introduce the project, so I know we've received our conditional site plan, special use approval back in 2021 for this project. We've been working with Orange and Rockland Utilities through various design iterations, and our revised or proposed treatment building has been reduced in size from 1,067 square feet to 927 square feet, slightly rotated while maintaining all of the bulk standards. The reduced building size and orientation helps to minimize the impact within the O&R easement, as well as maximizes distance from the overhead voltage wires. The overall need for the project still remains the same. This is to house critical drinking water, water treatment for drinking water standards. The two vessels within the building to ensure compliance with DOH, and pretty much I think that's summarizes the project. So we did receive your comment letters and plan on addressing them accordingly. So I don't know if we wanted to go into detail, go through those at this time.
Let me just touch base on them very briefly.
Sure.
This project, I'm sure the board knows, or most likely knows, that this project was approved back in November of 2021. And there are, as you had indicated, some changes necessary to comply with O&R requirements. Those changes pretty much reduce, it's not an increase, it's actually a reduction, I think, overall of the total site development. As you had indicated, it's a smaller building. It's, if anything, it's less of an impact than that which was previously approved. So for those reasons, I think we could consider this a type 2 action under seeker, and it would not require a seeker resolution. So comment 2, just asking that the wetlands consultant just verify that the wetlands are still accurate. It could be by just a simple letter or a simple field visit, because it has been, I think, probably a couple of years since the wetlands were located.
Sure.
And then the only other comment pertaining to planning would be that we probably should have something from O&R, whether it's in an email format or a letter that they've reviewed the latest plan and that they're okay with it. Something from them that we're, the planning board, is aware that they've actually seen the plan and that they're okay with it.
Sure.
And then I guess comment 4 is just leaving up to the attorney as to whether or not a public hearing it would be required or whether it can be waived. Just again, noting that this is a reduction from the size and scope of the project that was previously approved. Under engineering, I just have 3 small comments. We would ask that you look into some sort of roof drainage, pre-treatment, whether it's maybe a little constructive wetland or maybe an infiltration basin, something to prevent, the roof runoff directly into the wetland. You did provide a letter that indicated there's no increase in runoff, which we're okay with. But the sensitivity of the wetland being so close to the building, if there's anything you can propose to just do a little treatment before it goes to the wetland, would be beneficial.
Sure, we could look into that.
Okay, and just to show under a stabilized construction entrance, I think you have the detail on the plan, but I don't think you showed it in plan view. And a stockpile detail, again, was shown in the detail, but not on the plan. And that's all we have.
John, I have a question. They had submitted the the last time for the wetland permit and the floodplain permit, they would still have to do the same thing, but again,
Correct me if I'm wrong, the floodplain permit, wetland permit is identical now, or is it the same? It's not increased, is that true?
I don't.
That's correct.
Okay,
We're not disturbing any more of the wetlands buffer, and the building just has been
Okay.
smaller, so it's the same as what we submitted previously for those.
so unless there's some sort of statute in the code which it
No.
expires after a certain number of time, I would say those permits are still valid.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to confirm officially in the meeting. They don't have to redo that or repay anything or anything. Okay. Lou, did you have anything?
Lou, I think you were muted.
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't have anything.
So, based on what you said, John, do you feel this can go to, planning board?
Yeah, no, this can go to planning board and
So John and Lou, if you guys feel that the changes or the amendments to the already approved site plan are sort of de minimis, it would be up to you guys to determine whether or not there would have to be a formal public hearing before the planning board. Based on what John's saying, I don't think that's necessary. If Lou agrees, then I think this can go before the planning board for formal review without the need for a public hearing.
I agree.
I agree.
So it goes to planning board, but without a public hearing.
Yes, under that section of the code, it's 21076.
All right, and this application is on for ZBA on Thursday to extend the variance,
Right.
just for the record. Mr. Kirkpatrick, do you have any questions?
Just to confirm the planning board meeting date, I assume that's that February date.
Yes, the February planning board meeting is February 23rd. It's a Thursday it's in person, by the way. And planning board starts at 7 p.m. The deadline would be January 19th. So I'm assuming I still send out for agency comments and GML like we did before, correct? Right, Bob?
I'm sorry.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. I'll
okay.
send them
I
out.
just wanted to confirm. Okay, it's
I'm
just
sorry, I
not-
didn't know you were talking to me, Suzanne.
That's okay. That's all right. Ryan, I'll be in touch with you on what I need. Okay,
Okay, great. Thanks, Suzanne.
no problem. All right. Anything else? Any questions anybody has? Ryan, Mr. Kirkpatrick, procedural, anything else we have to submit? No?
I'm good on my end.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all for your time.
day.
Much appreciated.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next application is for the Cherry Lane Hatzela at 275 Cherry Lane. It's a proposed Hatzela EMS. It's in a new site location. It was previously in CDRC twice before at a different address. And I believe for the applicant, we have Mendy and Paul Baum. I thought I saw, there he is, Paul Baum.
Hi, Suzanne.
Happy New Year, how are you?
Happy New Year, everybody. Hi, Bob, Stephen.
Happy New Year, Paul.
Happy New Year.
Okay, 275 Cherry. Paul, are you gonna introduce it or Mendy, the project?
Oh, I think Mendy's a little bit more familiar with the project than I am. I just got called in recently, so I know there was a prior CDRC meeting on this applicant on apparently a different parcel. And now they've located this parcel, so I'll let Mendy.
Okay,
introduce it.
So the applicant is Hatsala EMS. Hatsala is a volunteer ambulance service here in town of Rampo. We're looking to construct a garage at 275 Cherry Lane with 3 garage bays, accessory offices, a bedroom for Shabbos use and storage. The building will be approximately 6,400 square feet. We're providing 13 parking spaces. We do need a number of variances, and we do need a special use permit.
Did you say 7,400 feet on that?
Sorry, 64.
6,400 square feet?
The drawings say
approximately.
58.
Sorry?
The drawings say 58.
We're working it out with the architect because he hasn't finished the plans yet. We're going to clarify that.
Okay. So did you have anything else while we have you, or you want me to start with John?
Start with John, please.
Okay. John, you want to start?
Sure. Under the planning portion of the review, this is a permitted use in the R40 zone. Again, as with other applications, this does require a significant number of variances, 6 to be exact, if I'm not mistaken. And I know this is an alternative location to a previous location. I'm not sure whether we're going up or down in required variances, but we certainly recommend from a planning perspective that alternative locations to try to minimize the number of variances be evaluated. So that's comment number 1. Comment number 2 is that if this site is pursued further, that those variances have to be granted by the ZBA prior to planning board approval, and the date shown on the plans with the type of variance and the date of variance if granted by the ZBA. This will be considered an unlisted action under seeker and require a seeker resolution. As a general rule, all proposed commercial sites require a long form EAF. That excludes some minor additions to residences and things of that sort, but the magnitude of this site is there that we recommend that a long form EAF be prepared, which is consistent with all of our other applications. So a full review of the EAF and the environmental will be done when we get a long form EAF. Comment 5 is just to note that a lighting and landscaping plan is required at some point, and to provide the parking calculations to verify the adequacy of the proposed parking. And I think it's probably a good point, and I probably need to include it on future reviews, to also include the maximum number of well, in this particular case, it doesn't matter. It's not for public purposes or for congregative purposes. It's just for an ambulance services. So I think it's going to be limited to just the number of personnel, or the maximum personnel that will be on site. I don't know whether there's office staff or whether it's just you know, the people who are on call, but we should include a little discussion for that as well.
We'll give a number, we'll give it like an occupancy calculation or something, but I believe it says the planning board should determine the amount of parking spaces. So I guess.
Okay, so we're not at planning board yet, so I guess we'll address that when we get there.
All right.
So if you have any comments on those, we can go over them, and if not, I'll move on to the engineering comments.
I'm good. Paul, any questions?
No questions.
All right, on to the engineering comments. Please note the existing structures to be removed. I believe there's some existing structures that are going to have to be removed, but the plan doesn't specify that. And then there's some notation for some proposed parking in areas, but there's no parking there. So I'm not sure if that's just a mislabel, or whether I'm not seeing something. Comment 3 under engineering, the handicap access. I think there's enough room there to make it much closer to the building. Generally speaking, we should try to make the handicap access as close to the building as possible. So please take a look at that. Comment 4, there's and a lot of these are maybe technical, so we don't have to get into too much detail, but there's some areas on the site plan which appear to be very flat with like no grade, and then there's other areas on the one corner of the building where you can see the one contour that comes down. It looks like it's 20% grade coming down the parking. So we need to look at the slope grades of the parking lot. Fire truck access and turning radius is required on the plan. Utility service lines, if you look at the plan, they show there's some lines that just kind of end and they don't connect to anything. So I don't know if something was missing on the drawing, but they just 2 lines that go to nowhere. I think a legend on the plan would help make it clear as to what's existing and what is proposed. So if we could add that. Comment 8, the parking calculations are required to make sure calculations for the pipe sizing. We're proposing a 12-inch pipe at a 0.5% slope, and I can tell you from an engineering perspective that has like little to no carrying capacity. So the pipe sizes need to be either upped, or maybe the slope's a little bigger, or calculations to verify that it'll actually drain. We're going to need infiltration testing for the infiltration chambers at some point. Comment 10 is just noting again, the water department, Rockland County, Ramapo DPW, Rockland County Health Department, and Sewer Department review. And asking for site distances for the driveway entrance shown on the plan, and just note that the total area of site disturbance shown on the plans. So I'm certain that it's well below an acre, which is the cutoff for a mandatory full SWIP. So, but I ask that that be shown on the plan.
There's also a letter from Tolman Fire Department dated December 30th, received yesterday, that I forwarded, and they had comments as well for the record. Lou, I don't know if you have anything now. You're muted.
Working on it. Thank you. Got it.
Sorry.
I have a question because I calculated out the parking area, the paved area between the building and the parking spots that are lined, and it's over 13,900 square feet. Can you tell me why you need such a big parking area to turn around an ambulance? The building is only 35 feet deep.
We'll definitely look into that.
I mean, you could reduce that parking lot by half and save some more green area, and then you wouldn't have such water infiltration issues.
Okay, we'll definitely look into that.
And please get me an actual reading on the building, if it's 58, 68, or 74.
All right.
Thank you.
Do that. Sure. Thanks.
Okay, so I assume this is coming back to CDRC with the changes. Okay. Anybody else have anything? Okay.
All right.
So the next CDRC is February 14th. The deadline is January 26th.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
You too.
Take care.
Bye.
You as well. Okay. The next application is 10 South Des Moines LLC at the address 10 South Des Moines Avenue. For 2 office buildings, it was an amended site plan with minor modifications that was approved by the planning board. It's on to discuss chairman's endorsement. We have the prior engineer and prior planner that had originally been on the project, Valerie Monastra from Nelson Popon, and Eve Mancuso from Brooker Engineering, because they had done the whole project when it was the first project, second project as well. I did forward Eve's comments to the applicant. There were a number of engineering, but we can go through it. I think for the applicant, we have Coleman on. I believe Amy Mealy, the attorney, is on, and I don't know who else, if their engineer is on. I did request that their engineer be on because there are a number of engineering questions that Eve had, or comments, I should say.
Yes, Suzanne, hi, it's Amy. Happy New Year to everybody, by the way. And thanks for making room for us today. So, you know, there's been a long and tortured history on this project, and we're trying to get it wrapped up. Justin Lim was the engineer from Leonard Jackson Associates, and he is out of the country right now. And so we have Avi, hold on one second. Avi
Hi,
can
I can
probably
just
tell.
introduce myself, Avi Weinberg from Weinberg Lim Engineering.
So Avi Weinberg is on
Yes.
with us today, and we understand that we're going to have to probably come back to one more CDRC before chairman's endorsement. So I'll try not to take up much of your time. So the first thing I should report is that the all of the Article 78 proceedings surrounding this application have been disposed of either by settlement or by order. So they are done. The only change that we came for in the last application was to change, I believe it was some grading and some architectural details, for which we got planning board and architectural review board approval. And so today, given that I know we're going to have to come back probably next month, I really just wanted to zero in on what everybody needs, you know, from us, since there are a bunch of new players in the game. And maybe Suzanne, if I could ask you first, I know, so let me just explain maybe a little bit of the background. The applicant remains 10 South Debon LLC. There are new members of that LLC. So what I was planning to give you was a new corporate resolution and a new stormwater and fire lane agreement with the new managing member's signature on that. Will that suffice, or do you need anything else?
I will leave that to Stephen and Bob to answer.
Okay.
I don't know.
Quite frankly, I believe that should be sufficient, but why don't you just send it along like an email outside of this, and should be coming back to CDRC anyway, and we can determine whether any additional information is required.
Okay, great. And then I will leave to Avi any engineering points that we have to dot the i's and cross the t's on for the final submission. So I'll hand it over to them.
Okay, Amy, it's Suzanne. Just one of the items to be consistent when you're making those changes on the stormwater agreement, there is a Schedule A that the engineer needs to complete based on the revised site plan. I was getting the submission of the previous Schedule A from 2017, which will not suffice, besides changing the ownership names. The same with the cost improvement forms. I need to see the cost improvement forms with the new name and what the costs are for the current site plan because we need to look at what was previously submitted and paid for by the prior owner. And then that included also getting a copy of the assignment of sale so that we could see the change in ownership. Because
Okay.
there seems to be different names on different everything. And I think Eve will allude to that when she discusses her letter. But
Yeah, I'll be honest with you guys. I don't think that there was like some big closing with a stock purchase agreement or anything like that. I think they substituted managing members, but I can certainly get you the resolution that will recite that and allow for the new managing member to sign. And the cost improvements, I thought we got you the new one, but if we didn't, I apologize and we will get that. So just for my edification, so we need the revised stormwater that the engineer needs to look over, the revised cost improvement forms,
which I
and
did get, but it has the wrong name on it. It's saying Allegro Office Building instead of.
oh, it still says Allegro. Oh,
Yes,
okay.
I never got the
I'll
revised.
look into that. I know I did a revised one a few weeks ago.
It didn't come back to me with the proper name on it.
Okay, my apologies. It'll
That's
come back
okay.
with 10 South DeBon, LLC, which is still the same entity.
Okay.
Okay, and then engineering comments, I'll hand it off.
All right, then I'm gonna let Eve go over her portion of it, and then we have Valerie for the planning portion.
Okay, thank you very much. Good to see everyone again. I just have some brief comments. I'll continue on the administrative end since that's what we started out with. My concern is that the plan set, again, as Suzanne had mentioned, is still referring to Allegro pretty much all the way through. And I think for consistency and moving forward, all the plans should be labeled 10 South DeBorn LLC. If you want to add a note that sort of says previously known as Allegro Office Building, I don't have any objection to that. But all of the documents should have the same project name.
Okay.
And when the plan set is finally submitted for final, all of the plan sheets should have the final revision date. So when we sign off or the chairman signs off on the plan set, typically they just stamp the first sheet of the set with the date. So it's a lot, it's much more helpful if every sheet within the set has that same revision date. So whoever goes out there to inspect it understands, we're all looking at the same final plan set. That's pretty much just the administrative end of it. I had a couple of technical questions and I'm not so sure they can be answered if Justin isn't here, but I'll give it a shot. At one of the previous review letters back from when it was Allegro, we were talking about the feasibility of the stormwater management system and soil testing and things like that. And I see that there was some soil testing done, but in the critical area, which was test hole 1 and test hole 5B, they're not noting the depth to groundwater.
Sorry, Eve, I just want to write that down. So it was test hole 1.
Yeah, if you look at the email that I sent to Suzanne, I don't know.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
test
I
hole
forwarded
5B.
it.
Okay, so
thanks.
it's number 2. It's so you have number 2 is test hole 1 and 5B in that email.
Thank you.
Okay, so you have it in writing, so we don't lose the comment. But we need to know the depth to the groundwater. The way the report was, or the information was presented, it just said groundwater was not found at a certain elevation. And we need to know where it was found, not where it was not found.
Got it.
And that's been a comment that's been out there because the stormwater management system in that corner is rather critical. A new comment is regarding the hot box. The hot box is varying throughout the plan set. The location is fine either on the left or right side of the driveway, but whatever is finally determined. I think the right side of the driveway may be the latest revision because I see the hydrant was also placed on the right side of the driveway. So if that could be, as I said, it's moving on the different plan sheets.
Mhm.
The, going down to the lower part of my email memo, I still didn't seem to find the town of Ramapo sewer approval. I see that there was a pump station introduced. So, and there was a note on the plan that said designed by others, but I don't know if it in fact has now been designed and if it's been submitted to the town. Because it was a little bit unusual to see the pump station inside of the building footprint. Typically, that would be in a driveway, so it's easily accessible for maintenance and service. So I was just concerned if the town has actually looked at it, because we had a recent submission on another project that the town was not given the opportunity to review it, and it did cause a few problems during construction. So we have to make sure that the town did sign off on your sewer system. Number 3 is just updating documents again. The SWIP document has to be updated to reflect the current project name as well as responsible parties. Number 4 is the offsite cost improvement. An offsite cost improvement was submitted, but it didn't reflect all of the offsite work to include the curbs, the roads, the utilities. We mentioned number 5, that was the administrative issue regarding the naming of the project, and number 6 was regarding the revision date. Essentially, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amy, just in terms of terminology, the cost improvement form is the inspection fee form. It's the same.
Right. Okay.
Just want to make sure
Got-
you're.
got it.
Can I just ask
Thank you.
regarding the depth to groundwater? Again, if nothing was observed, how are we supposed to put something there?
Well, on all your other test holes, you did observe, you went down deeper until you located groundwater. In this particular, in all the other test holes say depth to groundwater, whatever it was, 7 feet, 9 feet. In this particular instance, it didn't go down to the same extent. It just went down whatever 5 or 6 feet and says no water found.
Okay.
Right, so if water was found at 7 or 9 feet on all the other holes, it would just make sense to do the same type of investigation in the critical area where you're actually building your system. Because
Yep.
we want to make sure that there's 2 feet clear between the groundwater and the bottom of the system.
Thank you, Eve.
Sure.
Valerie?
Okay, yeah, my, our comments, we specifically looked at it in comparison to what was presented before and our remaining comments in the resolution. So the one thing that we noticed is, so one of the things that we identified is that, you know, the height of the building should be identified for all elevations, especially since there was a lot of regrading taking place on site. And so we noticed in the architectural drawings that the front elevation has the height, but none of the other elevations specifically identify the height of the building. So that one, that needs to be confirmed for, you know, when you resubmit again.
Okay.
Was the parking, remember it was in the resolution that the parking needed to be changed from underneath the building? Was that changed? It was, okay. And Amy, the Tallman Fire Department and the fire inspector also have comments. When they saw Eve's comment about the hot boxes, they wanted to review it again. So as soon as I get those, I will forward them to everyone.
Okay. Okay.
My turn?
Yes, Lou, it's your turn.
Thank you. I was
Hi,
just.
Lou.
Hey, Amy, how
Happy
you
New
doing?
Year. I
Happy
like
New
your
Year.
I like your background. I don't think you're sitting outside in that weather.
I would love to be though, actually. I reviewed the old notes and reviews too, and I thought there was 2 things we had issues with. One was parking under the building, and it still appears like there's a cutout under the building for parking. And the other one was the sprinkler. And the plans are listed as a non-sprinkler building.
Okay,
Yes, those were two items and in the resolution, I believe, as well.
okay. I think those were in the resolution itself. And the parking under building, and I'm reaching back because this has been going on so long. Was it, was there some that was just like under like an eave or something, or was there
Yeah,
actual parking?
There's 8 spaces under the back
Yeah.
end of the building.
It was
Okay.
shown on the architecturals, and when planning board saw it at their meeting where they approved it, that's when Eve and Lou were like, that is not a good idea. And
Right.
that was the point I was bringing up before, was I don't know if that was changed.
Okay,
I didn't think it was, but I'm not a good at reading plans, so I
Yeah.
can't. answer that.
And the
It
current
looks
drawings
like-
are showing them there.
It looks like on the site plan, the spaces are outside of the building footprint. Let me see, because I did check that, but I did not check the architectural plan. So I was focusing on the site plan. And the site plan shows that the overhang is still present, but the curb line is outside of the building line.
got it.
So that's on, let's see, do you have the same thing there, Lou? Yeah, that's pretty consistent. 2, 3. But yeah, there's definitely still an overhang, but the site plan doesn't show that there's parking laid out under it. But now, like I said, I didn't look at the architecturals. And the architecturals look like it's still under there. If you're looking at S2, I don't know if anyone has that in front of them.
Got it.
It appears that
Yep.
they're showing the outline of parking stalls. Would you agree there, Lou?
Yes, looks like there's 2 stalls on each side, possibly one in the middle.
Yeah, so it looks like there's in between the columns there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that is on the architectural plan. If you look at S2, that needs to be clarified.
Okay. So, Suzanne, if I heard you correctly before, we need to submit these revised plans addressing these concerns by January 26th for the February 14th meeting.
Yes, please.
Okay. Kalman, Avi, anybody else have any
Yes.
issues you want to address?
No, we'll just take the comments and address it with Justin and resubmit.
Okay, we'll do that. And I'll summarize this for everybody and send it out. Thank you guys for making the time for us today.
Okay, Bob and Steve, I have a question because I have monies with the village under the Allegro agreements. So for example, the stormwater was under Allegro 5,000. When Eve looks at the revised Schedule A, say she thinks it's now, I don't know, 6,000. Does that mean I just get a new agreement in the new name and get the difference of 1,000 and then put that money together? I just want to know how you want me to handle this.
Hello. Hey, John, how are you?
I'm
good.
I muted him.
Susanna, it would matter exactly what kind of agreement we have. Sometimes the agreements will indicate that it's with this particular entity and its successors. So I don't know what kind of paperwork you're holding. To be clear, we should get something from the applicant and from the, if it's another entity, the prior entity as well, as to what they want to do with that monies.
Okay, and that was my question. That's why I usually ask for the assignment of sale, because in the past, when I've done this, it says something that whatever, shares or
Correct.
whatever they did rolls over. And if I
Correct.
don't have that, I didn't know how to handle it. The stormwater agreement, I believe, does say it's successors. I'll send it to both of you again. I did send most of our agreements to Bob, but not all of them, but I'll double check and send it to both.
Okay,
of you.
yeah. Successes and assigns is generally common language that they employ
Okay.
in those agreements,
Um,
generally,
there
so.
is no agreement on the cost estimate. It's just the form that's filled out, the money is put in, and then as I get the bills from the engineer for inspecting, it offsets it. So that one we'll need to figure out how to handle.
Yeah, we should straighten that out now before we go forward, just so
Yeah, that's
the
why I'm
old
asking.
applicant and the present are clear on what we're doing, and we don't get caught in the middle. That's
Yeah, so
that's the goal.
Steve, the entity, 10 South, 10 DeBon, actually, I don't think it even has an S, 10 DeBon LLC is still the same entity. So if I get you a resolution that has recitals in it that say there's a new managing member, this managing member has the authority to sign, the shares were assigned, the escrow may be assigned to the new entity. Can I kind of put it all in there? Would that be acceptable to you?
I think that would be, and that would be legally binding. I feel I'd feel better about it if the outgoing entity, those managing partners also would sign off on it. No, the
Yeah,
outgoing
we
and
can-
ingoing, so everybody's
yeah.
on the same page, and that
Sure.
the village can rely on that then.
Okay, yeah, I don't know that it's an outgoing entity. It might be outgoing people, but I will
Yes.
get whoever signed before to, we'll do our best to get them to sign this new document.
Yeah, it sounds like the entity is the same. It's the same LLC. It's the same company.
Right.
Limited liability company. It's just different managing partners, perhaps,
Correct.
or members rather, different members. So, however, I think you can draft something that would assure the village that we can rely on that there's a changeover and that we can either keep the monies that we have already or do something else. But yeah, I think you have the right idea.
Okay, so maybe what I'll do is before we even submit for the next one, I'll try and shoot that over to you real quick so you can take a look at it and see if it's acceptable.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Amy, just so you know, under the old Allegra, it was BB Property, and then that was brought up by Mr. Reddit in a meeting that it went to Naftali Breckner, and then the name changed after that. So there is a trail of different names, which is why I just want to make sure, because I have about $13,000 in change in cost fees between Shade Tree, Town of Ramapo Restoration, SOARS, and cost improvement fees. So I just want to make sure that we handle it appropriately.
I totally hear you, Suzanne.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, so I guess you'll resubmit and come back to CDRC?
Calman, we good with that for resubmitting on the 26th for February?
He's not on.
Oh, okay. I'm telling you, we'll resubmit on the 26th for February.
Okay. All
Thanks
right.
again.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Eve and Valerie, for coming on.
Yeah.
And I'll let
Thank you
you
so
know
much,
about the
everyone.
All right, bye.
Yeah,
Have a
Happy New
great
Year,
day,
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.